And I just want to add one last point, which is it's so bizarre to have to sit here and listen to people like Katie McFarland say, oh, we have to go to war to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon, when these were the same exact people who said the same exact thing about Saddam Hussein, that we had to go to war because Saddam Hussein was going to get a nuclear weapon and pass it to Al Qaeda and they were going to detonate it.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Really glad you are here for this one because this might be one of the most intense panel discussions I have come across in a while. So what you are about to watch is a heated exchange between Glenn Greenwald, Katie McFarland, Piers Morgan, and several others, including a decorated Navy SEAL and a combat pilot, all clashing over some of the most alarming war rhetoric to come out of a sitting American president in recent memory. The core of it comes down to one brutal question. Is this legitimate military strategy, or are we watching the same playbook that dragged America into one of its most costly mistakes in history get dusted off and used all over again? And the people in this room do not agree. Trust me when I say the second half of this is where everything explodes. So stay with it all the way through, because the moment Glenn drops his Iraq comparison is genuinely something else. Before we get into it, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are watching from. I always love seeing where this community is coming from, and honestly, it blows me away every time. All right, let us get into it.
So as you can see right there, he's not saying he's going to have a genocide on the people of Iran. What he's saying is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that took over 47 years ago is who he's focused on eradicating. And remember, he's dealing with terrorists. This is a terrorist regime. So for 10 years, I studied the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in back vaults for the U.S. Air Force. And we always knew this is what they were going to throw at the end game of this war, which are terrorist proxy tactics. So that's going to be the first brief that President Trump got from General Raising Kane is, hey, look, at the end of this, when their military is decimated, their Navy is decimated, they're going to rely on proxy tactics to cause pain on the global economy in the Straits of Hormuz. And so we're seeing that play out. Now, could the president have used some different choice words instead of a whole civilization? Maybe that can be taken out of context. So yeah, he could have changed that.
I mean, seriously,
Yeah,
Max,
but
look, I
if you
appreciate you translating the president's words into
Yeah, well, it doesn't even need to be
into a far
translated,
more
Piers.
benign wording.
Well,
but the reality is, had he
it's-
started by saying, I want to get rid of this IRGC regime,
Yeah.
okay, that's one thing, all right? But he didn't. He used the words,
Yeah.
a whole civilization will die tonight.
Right, that could be taken out of context.
You might have wanted him to say what you've just articulated, and if he'd said that, there wouldn't be the outrage there is. But he didn't say that.
Well, he did at the end. He brings it home
No,
and
he says at
he
the end
cleans it up.
something that is completely contradictory to what he said at the start, which is classic Trump in this war. You know, one
Well, I
of the
think you
things,
gotta interpret
as
both
you know,
pieces,
sure. I mean,
Piers. You
I would
gotta
say
look
to
at
you,
both sections.
Max. I would say to you, but should I call you Max or Ryan? By the way,
Ryan's fine.
Ryan. You know, look, when you were serving, right? If to have a commander in chief sending such mixed messages all the time, in real time, publicly, right? I mean, this is not good for anyone serving in the United States.
And I can understand why it's
military.
confusing. But the art of war, so that's one of the tactics that has been used in military operations for thousands of years. The art of war is you keep them guessing. You don't want to tell the Iranian regime when this war is going to end. You don't want to tell them what's coming next. You don't want to tell them what you will or won't strike. So deception is a huge part of warfare, and that's something that's hard for the civilian population to understand. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with a terrorist regime. So you have to sometimes fight fire with fire.
Okay. Before I come back to Glenn, I wanted to just ask Rob O'Neill something that Tucker Carlson also said. He publicly urged United States military and Pentagon officials to actively defy Trump and refuse orders if he attempts to launch nuclear weapons against Iran.
If you work in the White House or in the U.S. military, now is time to say no, absolutely not, and say it directly to the president, no. In case you're thinking about using some weapon of mass destruction against the population of Iran, in whose name we liberated Iran, we killed their religious leader for their benefit. Do you remember that? This was last month. Those people who are in direct contact with the president need to say no.
What do you feel about that, Rob? I mean, the idea that people serving at high level in the military or at the Pentagon would defy an instruction from the commander-in-chief to launch a nuclear weapon.
Well, I mean, that's not going to happen. Those are, they're going to have to be, there'll need to be lawful orders. And the whole thing with deciding what order is lawful is completely against the uniform code of military justice. Never happened. Plus, if you notice, he didn't say nuclear weapons. We do have weapons more powerful than nuclear weapons. People are going to get wrapped up in that 80s style of Russia versus the United States. But we have stuff there. And just other things you got to consider. Yes, the Truth Social is social media and he's using it sort of as a bargaining chip. You got to figure, look at the amount of time we had tier 1 operators on the ground. Who's to say we didn't get the uranium already? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we do. It's not just shoot from the hip. We have very talented people doing a lot of talented stuff.
This is the moment that tells you everything, because when Ryan sits there and says, and I'm paraphrasing here, could the president have used some different choice words instead of a whole civilization? Maybe that can be taken out of context. I need you to really sit with that for a second. Maybe it can be taken out of context. You have to understand what is actually being defended here. A sitting president of the most powerful nation on earth posted language that directly implied the destruction of an entire civilization, 90 million people, and the best defense available is maybe the wording was a little off. That is not a defense. That is damage control dressed up as analysis. And here is what people do not realize about this moment. The ones who are supposed to be pushing back the hardest are the ones finding the softest landing spots for the most extreme language. When someone with a military background, someone who genuinely served and understands what war actually costs, still cannot bring themselves to call this what it is, that tells you how normalized this has become. This is the part that blows my mind. We are not talking about a controversial policy. We are not talking about a trade deal or a budget disagreement. We are talking about public statements that experts in international law have said could already constitute a violation of the laws of war. And the response from the defending side is essentially, well, he always exaggerates. Think about what that argument is actually asking you to accept. It is asking you to build a permanent exception for the most powerful office in the world. It is asking you to say that the rules everyone else follows simply do not apply here because this particular leader has always talked this way. That is not a standard any serious person should be comfortable with. And the fact that even people sympathetic to his position are admitting the words were wrong, just not wrong enough to matter, should be setting off every alarm you have.
Yes, he's doing stuff with the negotiations. I mean, I don't think when you're banking on the entire population to rise up to get rid of the Islamists is the way to say you're going to wipe out an entire civilization. But different words. Yes, he always goes a little bit further, saying, okay, we're going to take Greenland. We're going to take Greenland. It's okay. Maybe we'll have a few bases in Greenland. He's going to take the long shot, but then back off. I just saying you're going to wipe out a civilization. Bad choice of words, I think.
But I was really struck. I was really struck. For example, the biggest mission in modern American history post Second World War is the mission that you were on to kill Osama bin Laden. In terms of the importance, I think, to Americans and to the country and to the people to finally see him get justice for what he did on 9/11. It was an incredible mission. But what was the theme of that mission? Utter secrecy. Absolutely everybody involved, tiny number of people at the White House knew about it. Very small number of people in the military knew about it, even though all you top-level guys were all being brought together. Highly unusual for that to happen. But there was a wall of secrecy because people understood that careless words cost lives, the famous World War II thing. Here with Trump, we have the complete opposite. He just spews out all this stuff like a machine gun, a verbal machine gun, all day long. And I don't understand how any of that helps. I don't think it's duping the enemy. I don't think the Iranians take any of it that seriously. I just don't understand why he feels the need to do this.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's giving away any secrets. Everything is extremely close held. It's hard for me to find out any information about who's involved in anything, and that's talking with sources in Washington D.C. in Congress. They're keeping it very compartmentalized. And the Bin Laden raid is one thing. We can't tell anybody because if we even tell the host nation, because Pakistan was involved with that, they're going to run him to safety. Stuff like this, we knew they were shot down. Now we didn't know there were two pilots there until someone in the Pentagon leaked it. Someone close by. So they're not giving away stuff they're doing right now. I mean, even with Carg Island. Who's to say if we're going to take it completely? Which I mean, who knows now? We could. The United States could. We could take all the oil and keep it. So I don't think he's giving away secrets. I mean, appropriately having fun with it, inappropriately having fun with it, I guess is what I'd say.
And then Piers brings up something that I think is genuinely one of the most important contrasts in this entire conversation. He talks about the mission that took out Osama bin Laden, and he points out that the entire operation ran on one principle above everything else. Piers said this: utter secrecy. Absolutely everybody involved. Tiny number of people at the White House knew about it. There was a wall of secrecy because people understood that careless words cost lives. Now hold that image in your head. One of the most consequential military operations in modern American history, planned in complete silence. No social media posts, no dramatic countdowns, no public ultimatums, just silence, precision, and then results. Now compare that to what we are watching unfold. Public deadlines, prime time timing. Dramatic language posted directly to social media. Ryan himself admitted it. Inappropriately having fun with it is how he described it. And look, I want to be fair here. Ryan is not a bad person. He served his country. But when a former combat pilot describes the commander-in-chief's wartime communication strategy as inappropriately having fun with it and still defends it, you have to ask yourself what standard is actually being applied. Here is what this reminded me of. There is a reason that every serious military doctrine across history has treated information discipline as a weapon in itself. Sun Tzu wrote about this. The entire concept of operational security exists because your enemy is always listening. The moment you announce what you will or will not do, you hand them a roadmap. So when people argue that the dramatic public posts are actually a deception strategy, a way of keeping the enemy guessing, I need you to think about whether that logic actually holds. Because a real deception strategy does not come with a countdown clock posted publicly for the entire world to screenshot and analyze. That is not deception. That is performance, and there is a very real difference between the two.
Glenn Greenwald, I mean, it seems to me that if you look at what Putin has done in Ukraine, if you look at what China is believed to want to do in Taiwan, for example, the moral authority that Cenk Uygur talked about is incredibly important here. If America cedes any moral high ground whatsoever by openly threatening genocide as Trump has done today, whether he meant it or not, the fact he's gone on record as saying it, how can America, when another nation commits an act which they view as morally reprehensible, how can they play the moral card with it going forward?
Well, we can, and it wasn't just before this, just today. It was long before this. There have been American hawks who have gone to Europe and warned people in Europe that the reason China is rising so greatly and in displacing Americans in all the regions where we used to be dominant, like Africa and Latin America, is because the world perceives that the Americans and the United States government is a bully and just uses military force and war and weapons anytime it feels like. Whereas China was able to rise to a world power, even though they haven't fought a war in 48 years. The last war they fought was 1979. That was a 1-month border dispute with Vietnam. And yet we're fighting wars constantly. And now with the American president threatening civilizational annihilation. And I don't think we need to sit here and dissect the Truth Social post as though it's like some hieroglyphic from ancient civilization and we have to decipher what it really means. Trump has repeatedly made statements like this. As you said, on Easter, he vowed to destroy every power plant in Iran and every bridge in Iran. That wouldn't just affect the regime, that would destroy the lives of millions of people who are in Iran, people that were supposedly there to represent. And I just want to add one last point, which is it's so bizarre to have to sit here and listen to people like Katie McFarland say, oh, we have to go to war to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon, when these were the same exact people who said the same exact thing about Saddam Hussein, that we had to go to war because Saddam Hussein was going to get a nuclear weapon and pass it to Al-Qaeda and they were going to detonate it, all of which turned out to be lies. And they just come back like none of it ever happened. And even this rescue mission, I'm glad the pilot was rescued, but I do think we have to be a little bit aware as well that there's a lot of propaganda disseminated in war. We were told at the very start of the war, you may remember this, that there was this soldier named Jessica Lynch who heroically fought off Iraqi fighters and gunned a bunch of them down and was finally taken and tortured in a hospital, and U.S. forces rescued her in a daring raid, none of which turned out to be true. The media told this story over and over. So a lot of this is propaganda. A lot of this are things that we've seen before. And we do have a major problem even before Trump started with these insane threats, not just in this Truth Social post. And we didn't just threaten it. We have blown up their bridges, which obviously affects the population. We've blown up their refineries that poisons their air and water. These are things we're actually doing. And the U.S. was already in a hole morally and geostrategically, which is why China is rising, because countries would rather deal with them. And this makes it infinitely worse, even if Trump doesn't follow through on these monstrous threats.
Glenn Greenwald just laid down the single most important point in this entire segment, and I need you to feel the weight of it. He said China was able to rise to a world power even though they have not fought a war in 48 years. The last war they fought was 1979. Let that land. While America has been in a near constant state of military engagement, spending trillions, losing lives, destabilizing regions, China quietly became the second largest economy on Earth without firing a single international shot in nearly 5 decades. They did it through trade, through infrastructure investment, through showing up in Africa and Latin America, not with bombs, but with contracts. And that is the strategic reality that gets completely buried every time the conversation shifts to who said what on social media. But then Glenn goes even further. And this is where the Iraq parallel hits different. Glenn pointed out that the very same people now beating the drum about nuclear weapons in Iran, the same voices saying we have to act, we have to go in, these were the exact same voices that told America Saddam Hussein was weeks away from handing a nuclear device to a terrorist organization, and every single part of that turned out to be completely false, documented, confirmed, false. And here is what makes it so extraordinary. They came back, same argument, same urgency, same fear, like none of it ever happened. You have to understand what that pattern actually means. It means the argument was never really about the specific threat. The argument is a template. It gets reused because it works. Fear of a nuclear threat is one of the most powerful things you can put in front of a public. And when the people making that argument have already been proven wrong once on the exact same claim and face zero accountability for it, why would they ever stop using it? Glenn did not just make a political point there, he exposed a playbook. And the fact that it is still working, that people are still nodding along to the same script, is honestly the most unsettling part of this entire conversation. The moral hole that was already dug before any of these posts even existed only gets deeper when the loudest voices in the room have a track record like that. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.